just to kind of spark your memory from the book, or if you haven't read it, to be, you can read through these as we go. Any thoughts about this book? Anything that stuck out to you? How did it, what did you think as you read this book by Clayton Christensen, How Will You Measure Your Life? Yeah.
I think it's a good chance to step back and reconsider what priorities are, and not just what are my priorities, because I think they're my priorities, but where am I spending my time and energy?
Mm-hmm.
And is that the right place for those priorities?
Yeah. Yeah, he even says you can backtrack your strategy by where your resources are allocated, and that'll help you to determine if you're really sticking to those priorities, or if your resources are going to whatever screams the loudest at the moment. Anything else stick out to you?
I'll share.
Okay.
There's a section in the book where he talks about the importance of strong relationships.
Uh-huh.
So going back to, I shared a couple weeks ago when I was here, this book actually really was a pivotal point when I can be somewhat of a, I don't know if you'd call it a workaholic. I just find a lot of satisfaction that comes out of my job. I work as a massage therapist, but I own my own clinic, and I have for about 12 years. And just see, at that time when I read this, I just had my first child, and it helped me to really go back to what do I want from my kind of work-life balance. And one thing he talks about is, anyways, he goes back to strong relations are the most important are the most valuable asset. And at the end of your life, personal relationships matter far more than professional achievements. Investing time and effort in family and friendships is crucial for long-term happiness.
Mm-hmm.
And in the very beginning of the book, where he talks about, he has his colleagues that so many of them that graduated from Harvard together, and they have these amazing careers, but yet their personal lives are kind of crumbling underneath them. And that's kind of what starts this book of how can we still have these great careers, but also not have these crumbling family lives as well.
So how do we do that? Because I think that's probably a question all of us have faced and think about. How do you? I love the way you started the book, right? As you mentioned, all these Harvard classmates, they go on and do lots of great things in their careers, and some of them have a great career and have a great life, and others catastrophically fail, and including those that maybe were even involved in Enron and other real disasters that went to jail and prison. So what are some things that have helped you to find that happiness in life and in your career? Yeah.
One thing my wife and I really like to do once a year, we kind of just do a weekend getaway together. And I know I'm kind of weird, but I have this big, huge calendar. I think I've told you before, it's as big as a wall.
Yeah.
And we kind of strategize how much time we're spending with family, how much time is with business, and business is kind of a double-edged sword for me because I love it so much.
Mm-hmm.
But I also love my family so much. So it's kind of like this: how much time do I spend each place? And we just spend the weekend just talking about prioritization and where do we want to spend most of our time? How is it different this year when it was last year? How's it going to change in the next 3 years? And then we write together this plan, what's it going to look like? And then we map it all out and reverse engineer it. And it's just really fun to kind of see how it evolves every year and how it changes. And I really liked in the book the section that talks about our kids and kind of how we need to be really thoughtful in how we raise them.
Mm-hmm.
We give them, we don't push them hard enough, and they just become very dependent. But we challenge them appropriately over time, and it really helps them adapt and learn and grow. But I really love that section on raising our children, making sure they're resilient humans.
Mm-hmm. Very good. I love that. I love the foresight, planning ahead. Maybe as you meet, you look back at the previous year and you recognize what was different between your stated plan and what you actually did, and that's an opportunity to constantly be reevaluating. I love that. Thank you. Yeah.
So my husband and I were talking the other day, and he told me, I think he said it was a Mexican proverb or some proverb where a man is a fisherman and he goes out and he fishes, and then he comes home and he spends time with his family, and he doesn't make a lot of money, but he's happy, he makes what he needs, he has time with his family, and then another man comes along and says, you could like hire other people and make this a big company, and then eventually get to the point where other people are working for you, and then like you can be home and you don't have to work anymore, but you're still making money. But the man is like, I already get to spend time with my family. I'm already like happy with what I have. Why would I do that to eventually get to where I'm already at? So we were talking about this because I only work part-time. I have little kids. And we talked about me going to work full-time or like maybe investing more into my career. But then we think, for what purpose? Like, so that I can hire other people so that I can make money and not work. I'm already happy where I am, making enough, but still spending time with my kids. And so it was a funny kind of full circle perspective of knowing when you have enough and remembering what your priorities are.
I love that. I think in my life it's really hard to say no to things, and it's there's all these opportunities that come up, and it's easy to just try to take them all on, but to what end, like you mentioned, and knowing what your priorities are and strategizing around that from the beginning allows you to decide, I think, I'm going to take that on or not. In the book, he describes how sometimes people will take on jobs that make a lot of money early in their careers, or they'll say, I'm going to invest all my time into my career now and put family later, only to find that it never really works out the way they had intended. And I think we all grapple with that at some level. And I know many of you in this room are very busy and have lots of responsibilities, both professionally and at home. And I don't know how many of you balance it so well, but it's really good to think about. And what are you really trying to accomplish? So thank you for sharing that. Let's backtrack just a little bit in the book itself. There's this chapter at the beginning called "What Makes Us Tick," and this quote by Steve Jobs that's on the screen there. What motivates you in your job? What gives you that motivation to show up every day and work hard? Because I know a lot of you work very, very hard. Where have you found the best and greatest motivation for what you do?
I think the relationships.
Yeah.
Like I'm a fairly social guy, and I think the networking and the relationships and the meeting new people, and one of the things that I have always tried to do with the people that I'm with, especially my patients, is just educate. I love to educate and talk with them and things like that. And so I think that has kind of driven my career from where I was as a nurse to now a provider, is the ability to reach more people.
I love that. And you've definitely been very much on the forefront of patient education, and it shows. Definitely. I love that. Other things that motivate you?
I think it's kind of the mission or goals of what you're trying to accomplish. I was one of the fortunate few college kids in Utah that got to go do summer sales. If anyone else has had that experience, it's not, for me, not a super motivating thing to get up every morning knowing what I was going to go do and hassle people at their doors, and people are letting their dogs out on you, and other people call the cops on you, and nobody is happy to see you at their door. And it's not a super motivating thing, but what we do now, we get to help people, and that makes it much easier and more gratifying to come to work.
Mm-hmm. He talks, and I thought this was pretty powerful, about motivating factors at work and separating hygiene factors from things that truly motivate us. And hygiene factors would be like that you're fairly compensated, or that you're treated by your boss or your coworkers reasonably. You have an ample amount of time off, things like that. And then the true motivators are you're making a difference, you're passionate about the work you do. And I think summer sales is a pretty good example of where the motivating factor is money, probably. You're going out to make money, but in the end, that ends up just being a hygiene factor. It doesn't really keep people invested long term in something. It doesn't make them happy and passionate about what they do. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the first time I heard that kind of defined in that way, that hygiene factors versus the motivation factors. And hygiene factors keep you from being unhappy, but motivation factors actually make you happy.
Yeah.
Part of what Alex was saying, I think, what motivates me is trying to be the best possible person, surgeon, whatever, that I can be to be of help to other people.
Yeah.
But very much part of that is reaching my own potential in doing that, and I think that's a very motivating. I really want to become as best as I can be, and not in a selfish kind of self-aggrandizing way, but in a way where I'm the most capable of helping other people. That's kind of a goal that's linked.
Yeah, I found that motivating for me too. That this idea of just always trying to get better and becoming better. I too have really been motivated by the relationships that are built along the way, and that's been an enduring source of satisfaction. It's one of the reasons I really like getting together and meeting regularly. Yeah.
I thought that Clayton Christensen did a great job balancing this sort of idea of looking inward and personal development and looking outward at the development of others. And one of the things I really liked about his description about inward development is the idea of choosing opportunities that lead to growth for yourself.
Yeah.
And it made me think about the choices I've made in my life. And he's actually discussed this around the time he discusses Dell Computer. If you remember this part. And he says Dell can't turn back the clock and not outsource everything, right? And now I'm thinking to myself, am I having that trouble? Am I past the point on some things, or do I still have time to take opportunities that will help me grow in deeper ways?
Has anybody taken on an opportunity, not because it was more money or anything, but because they felt like it would be a good growth opportunity? An example of that? Maybe you have an example, I don't know. Yeah.
I'm not a super traditional example, but I'm still at UVU, and one of the things I do is I'm a mentor and a TA basically for the advanced anatomy course.
Yeah.
And so that's something that it isn't fully benefiting me. Sure, it helps me get the knowledge down more, but it's something where I can go and then help other students to be able to help.
Oh yeah, educating others is definitely one of those examples. I love that. Yeah, it's very challenging and it fulfilling, and it pushes you to learn things, or learn things better than you did the first time around.
I can share an example since you asked about this. About 10 years ago, I did a sabbatical. I teach at BYU in mechanical engineering. Okay? And I took a sabbatical and chose to go to a place called the Loughborough Design School in England, which is not an engineering school. It's a place where industrial design is taught and human factors and all these other kinds of things. And I did that on purpose so I could spend a year with people who are not like me, so that my mind would think differently about the world. And it didn't result in that many sort of professional accolades that we would hope that would happen during a sabbatical, but it did lead to the research that I've done for the last 10 years, which has led to a lot of proper accolades, we can say.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. That's not the most common way to pursue an opportunity. It's something that really is going to make you grow and different. That's pretty cool. Yeah.
This last year, I accepted a position to be on our board of directors for the state of Utah for the profession.
Yeah.
And it's added a load to my life that I just like.
Yeah.
It's just been a lot.
Yeah.
And, but as I've reflected on it, this last week, we had got this big work group together of all these private practice owners across the state of Utah. And we decided to put our heads together and what's the next move? Like, how can we work together as a team? And I got to know so many practice owners across the state, develop friendships, and connect our community in physical therapy in a way I've never seen before. And this last week, we're the first state in the nation to pass this bill. PTs are now primary care providers. And we just made history. The governor signed it last week, literally in the House and the Senate. It passed unanimously. Like, it's just invigorated this fire within me that I'm just so excited about it, because it's going to change things in our profession and healthcare so much. And it's helped me grow in ways that I never thought was possible. So, you take on these new opportunities, and yes, it does add different stress loads to your life, but then hopefully it invigorates you too.
Yeah.
Makes you excited.
Yeah, when you were talking about that, I thought that is cool, and what a great thing for the profession, and what a great thing for medicine, and neat that you had a part in it too, and that idea of feeling invigorated by doing something that's hard and different maybe is I think it's really cool. Way to go. Congratulations. That's really exciting. We'll have to, I think as time goes on, talk more about how that'll impact medical care and be better for the patients for sure. Thank you. That's great. Let's see. He talks about how he wanted to be an editor for maybe the Wall Street Journal. Can't remember. And that was his sort of determined goal, but he never got there. And how other opportunities came along the way, and it didn't really work out there, but I mean, it's hard to argue he didn't have a great life and a great career. Have any of you experienced this where your path didn't quite match with what you thought it would, where it took a deviation, and what that was like for you? Yeah.
Prior to being in human medicine, I was a veterinary technician for 10
Human
years.
medicine, I like it. Yeah.
Yes. I was a veterinary technician for 10 years, and I had I think over my career, I applied to vet school 4 times. I had 12,000 clinical hours. I had everything I needed to be a veterinarian. Everything that was my all-time goal was growing up on a farm and working, and I did surgery with it as a vet tech and things like that. And I thought that was right where I was supposed to go. And it was interesting where my career took me.
Yeah.
I remember at that last point of my wife saying to me, so if veterinary medicine was never a thing, what else is there? And I remember saying to her, I said, well, I'm really good at putting in catheters in dogs and cats, IV catheters, and I'm really good in helping with surgery, and I'm really good. And I said, I have these skills, and I think I could become a nurse.
Yeah.
And then I had experiences along the way that pushed me that direction, and I had these opportunities. I never could figure out why the veterinarians that I worked with, they would always send me out to talk to the clients about the surgeries that they did on their dogs. And I was like, well, I'm just the lowly vet tech. Why the heck? And they're like, well, yeah, but you communicate way better than I do. And I had that multiple times, and then as my career has gone along, I've seen where that has pushed me and helped me develop as a nurse and now a provider.
That was a great story. Yeah, we're glad you didn't get in.
I probably was one of the
I don't have
only
any
ones.
animals, so that it can be.
I do remember though, my nurse instructors were like, I'd be like, so in cattle, we do this, and they're like, I've never been asked that question before. So I would
That's funny.
just compare it, but it was just kind of funny.
How is this different? That's it. I appreciate that. That's great. That's a great story. And not to get too discouraged if it's not working out just the way you think, because you never know.
Yeah, you never know.
You never know. Any other? Yeah.
I was in undergrad at BYU, and I was planning on being a dentist because I spent a couple years in Africa, and I came back and I was like, I want to do something that like helps people and is connected to health, but I was too intimidated to do medicine. I had a brother-in-law that went into medicine, and he was like miserable about it. I was like, I'm not going to do that. And then I had this conversation with my friend, kind of in passing. He was a few years older than me, and he's applying to medical school, and I'm like, man, I wish I did that, but it's just like not for me. And he's like, why not? And I was just like, well, it's long years, kind of tough, it's difficult. And he's like, so you're just like scared to do it? And I was like, I guess. And he's like, you should just do it. And I was like, okay. So I changed my entire my entire schedule, and incidentally like broke up with this girl that I was dating at the time, and just like my entire life changed based off that one conversation. Wow. And it felt right, and I knew it was right, but I really like that, deliberate strategy versus unanticipated alternatives. You have to be moving in a direction, you have to be working towards something, but also you have to be very open to perhaps the better option or the intended option that you necessarily weren't aware of before.
Yeah, I love that.
I'm so curious, what does your friend do now?
He is an orthopedic surgeon, actually in Park City. So.
I love that, and he talks about how this process of deliberate strategy and an emergent one, looking at priorities, weighing alternatives, is continuous, and it's kind of something that we're always grappling with.
I really like that quote to be able to explain it better with my daughter, because I've been having this conversation with her. Her school's been putting pressure on her that they're supposed to come up with their 5-year plan.
Yeah.
And she's like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. What if I change my mind later?
Yeah.
And trying to get that concept to her that you can have a 5-year plan, but it's more of a 5-year outline or idea, because so many new things are gonna enter your life and it could change, and that's okay. And the way they are presenting it, it's decide now and commit forever. And so I think forming it, the way that they said it is a much better way to kind of interpret that and absorb that, especially for her. So I'd like to take that, because she's thinking that there isn't going to be some unknown factors that come in, and when she decides, she's locked in, and that's not, you have to be able to adapt.
I don't think anybody's careers are plotted out from the beginning and determined ahead of time, and you kind of, it's a journey more than it is some sort of travel plan that you've created. And I love how he describes his own career this way, because it did not turn out the way he ever would have imagined it. And I would anticipate that most people would look back on their careers and say the same thing. And he talks about at the very beginning how it's a lot better to develop or recognize good theory to predict the future and make decisions than it is to try to make it off of data, which is really like looking in the rearview mirror. And to use good theory to make decisions as you go and project what's going to happen in the future, much like a young high school student that did an aptitude test and all this information was found out about him, and then assigned to say, well, you should go into this career and that should be your path. That would be backwards of what he's describing here. And I found too, as I've talked to my own kids, my oldest is headed to college this fall. What is he going to do? And it's almost impossible to just say, well, you should do this, or let's map this out, because who knows what kinds of decisions will come along the way, and opportunities and relationships that he'll develop. Yeah.
It's worth recognizing that he, Clayton Christensen is writing this book at the end of his life. Okay, when he can actually look back
Yeah.
at a lot of stuff and a
Yeah.
lot of data. One of the things though that I really liked is that at the end when he talked about likeness and commitment and something else, what was it? Metrics. Those are like the three things that he talked about. He did describe developing the likeness that he wanted to become, like the goal of who he wanted to become when he was in his 20s. And when the emergent opportunity to get a PhD at 59 or however old he was at that point, it was emergent and not what he expected, but it was consistent with what he wanted to become.
Yeah.
And I think that was a key to his sort of maneuvering his career.
Yeah. I love that. And he had, I think, was a good example of somebody that identified priorities and who he wanted to be, like you said, early on. And while his course meandered around a little bit, as do all of ours, it was true to himself the whole time. And I think that that's a really good thing to think about. Great. Thank you for sharing, and appreciate all of you. And I think that in medicine, we have a wonderful opportunity to make a difference. There's a lot of things to grow in and do, and relationships to be had, and it's great. I really enjoy it. And I also think that the greatest satisfaction comes through relationships, both friends and then obviously family. And it's really, I have found it to be really challenging to not just jump at whatever screams the loudest and what is going to bring the most immediate satisfaction. Just last night, somebody texted me that this young lady has a metastatic breast cancer tumor to our occipital lobe, and it's like, oh yeah, let's get this taken out. And that's like every single day. And then before you know it, you're getting home at 9 o'clock at night and you missed a tennis match or whatever. And it's a challenge, and I think we all deal with it. So this was really helpful to look at how to strategize and make good decisions based on your true priorities day to day, so that you can find happiness both in your career and with your family. Again, appreciate all of you, and thanks for coming this morning.